everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a book that claims it can pinpoint the exact date and time Jesus was born.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's called Jesus Christ, Our Promised Seed. The author, Victor Paul Wierwille, blends biblical analysis and astronomical data to make his case.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're dealing with stars and constellations.
Yeah, and it gets even more interesting when you realize that for ancient cultures, the stars weren't just, pretty lights in the sky.
Right.
They believed the stars were like a divine script, a way for God to communicate with humanity.
So kind of like God was tweeting out a message in the stars announcing the coming of Jesus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Wierwille takes that idea and really runs with it. Like he makes this connection between the constellation Leo, the lion, and the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, that part really jumped out at me too. He has this whole section about how the names and stories associated with the stars in Leo seem to line up with some of the prophecies about Jesus.
Right, like he talks about Regulus, the brightest star in Leo. Did you know that in some Semitic languages, Regulus means foot?
I did not know that, no.
And he ties that back to a passage in Genesis that talks about a ruler coming from Judah.
Okay, I'm seeing where you're going with this.
The passage says, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet."
So Wierwille is saying this ancient understanding of the stars, this like celestial language, it was God's way of announcing the Messiah centuries before Jesus was even born.
Exactly. And he doesn't just stop at the constellations. Wierwille also looks at specific astronomical events that happened around the time of Jesus' birth, particularly the movements of Jupiter.
Jupiter. You mean the king planet?
That's the one. The book claims that Jupiter is the star of Bethlehem, and that it appeared in a specific part of the sky, what astronomers call in the rising, shortly after Jesus was born. And this was something that the Magi would have been watching for.
Hold on, the Magi. We always hear about the wise men, but we don't often talk about WHO. They were.
Right. And Wierwille gets into that too. He says these weren't just any wise men. They were a priestly caste from Persia. They were likely well-versed in astronomy and astrology, the scientists of their day, you could say.
So it wasn't just blind faith. They were using their knowledge of the stars that God used to lead them to Jesus.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Based on the timing of Jupiter's movements, Wierwille believes the Magi's journey to Bethlehem probably took over a year.
Over a year. That's quite a pilgrimage. Not exactly a quick trip to drop off some birthday gifts.
Yeah, it kind of challenges that image we have, right? And because of this extended timeline, Wierwille suggests that the Magi wouldn't have arrived in Bethlehem until well after Jesus was born.
Okay, so wait a minute. If the Magi got there a year later because of how long it took Jupiter to get into position, what does that mean for the whole, manger scene?
Well, that's where Wierwille really shakes things up.
Mm-hmm.
He says Jesus wasn't born in December.
Hold on, really?
Yeah, he says it was September 11th, 3 BC to be exact.
September 11th. Whoa. Okay, that's definitely not December 25th. How does he come up with that date?
It all has to do with Rosh Hashanah. Basically, he connects Rosh Hashanah to the birth of Jesus.
Okay, now I know Rosh Hashanah is important, but I'm not sure I see the connection to Jesus' birthday.
Sure, so you know how Rosh Hashanah is all about spiritual renewal?
Yeah, like the Jewish New Year.
Exactly. It's a celebration of God's creation and kingship. And Wierwille argues that Jesus, as the Messiah, is like the ultimate embodiment of that kingship, that new beginning.
So it's more of a thematic connection then, like Jesus represents a new era of God's reign.
Right. But Wierwille takes it a step further. He suggests that maybe Rosh Hashanah was originally the start of the year, not just a religious new year, but like the actual new year.
Wait, so like a different calendar system?
Yeah. And if you go by that calendar, Rosh Hashanah in 3 BC would have been on September 11th.
Wow, so he's using this whole other calendar to figure out Jesus' birth date.
And get this. Remember how we were talking about Jupiter appearing in the rising? Well, Wierwille says that on the night of September 11th, 3 BC, Jupiter would have been visible right before dawn, rising in the east.
Oh, wow.
And he points out how that lines up with the book of Revelation, which talks about a star rising in the east. It's like he sees it all as this huge celestial sign announcing the birth of the king.
Okay, I'll be honest, my head is spinning a little bit. We've got a September birth, Jupiter as this guiding star, the Magi as these, astronomer kings, and a whole different calendar system.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But I mean, Wierwille isn't just making this stuff up, right? He's got all this research to back up his argument.
Right. He uses astronomy, the Bible, historical analysis. It's pretty impressive.
But this isn't just about getting the day right, is it? There's got to be a bigger point to all of this.
Definitely. For Wierwille, it's all about understanding the Bible on a deeper level.
Mm.
appreciating the historical and cultural context, and seeing how all the pieces of God's plan fit together.
So for everyone listening, you might want to hold off on those December birthday parties for Jesus. This is really making me rethink what I thought I knew about the Christmas story.
It really makes you think. And I think that's what makes this book so interesting. It forces us to challenge our assumptions and look at the Bible with fresh eyes.
I like that, looking with fresh eyes.
Yeah, because you never know what you might discover.
It's true. I mean, we get excited about a meteor shower these days, but back then, every eclipse or comet, that was like a message from God, something to be interpreted.
Right, exactly. It puts a whole new spin on things, doesn't it?
It does. Like the Star of Bethlehem, if it was some predictable astronomical event, it's not just some magical one-time thing. It was something God planned out, put there for those who knew how to read it.
Exactly. It's like a divine code right there in the sky
Yeah.
for everyone to see, but you have to know how to read it.
And Wierwille is saying the Magi, they had the key to unlock that code.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, thinking about it like that doesn't mean it takes faith.
Right.
It means God used what the Magi knew, their expertise, to lead them to Jesus. It's a really cool example of faith and reason working together. You know what I
I
mean?
know it's not either or, it's both, right? God can use miracles or the natural world.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this book, Jesus Christ, Our Promised Seed, so interesting. It makes you dig deeper, look for the hidden meaning in the Bible. Like those stories we think we know, they can still surprise us.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this book?
Don't be afraid to ask questions, I think. Don't be afraid to question what you thought you knew about the Bible.
Er-
The more we know about history, what was going on back then, the more these stories come to life. And who knows, maybe there are other amazing discoveries waiting for us. We just got to be open to them.
That's a great takeaway. Be open, look closer. You might be surprised what you find. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up. Keep those thinking caps on, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.